Jo couldn't join us in person, so she's joining us via Teams, but she's got her presentation prepared and she's ready to answer all your questions. So just let this one person in. Come on, come sit down. And I'll hand over to Jo to kick things off. Yeah.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you, Charlotte. Sorry I can't be there in person. My colleague tested positive for COVID on Monday, so I'm waiting for a PCR test result. So we wanted to err on the side of caution, but lovely to meet you virtually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a presentation that will probably take about half an hour, and then Charlotte's going to help me to field questions and open it up to you, really, because this is meant to be a bit more interactive. This session is a workshop session, and I hope I'll be able to answer a lot of your questions. So my subject matter is about actually how UK growers could diversify into flowers, to cut flowers as a good cash crop, as part of a rotation or as a single enterprise. We've been growing in South Gloucestershire for over 12 years now, and we've been certified organic since 2017. So I run Organic Blooms. As I've just said, trading since 2005. We decided to become certified organic and became certified in 2017. We were one of the very first sole flower growers. A lot of people grow flowers on their mixed enterprises, but our certification was just for cut flowers, which the Soil Association had to create a special certificate for us, because to start with, DEFRA didn't consider us to come under the normal standards, but we go in and out of the standards all the time. Sometimes we're in them, sometimes we're not. I think we're currently in them, which is great, because actually our motivation for becoming organic is all about anything that grows in the soil. Really is important that it's grown to the best standards and with the most thought about the environment. And we think the onus on growers of luxury crops or ornamental crops is even greater, because actually you could argue, I shouldn't argue because it's my business, but that flowers aren't completely necessary. So I think it's even more responsible that we treat them and treat the soil with respect when we're growing a luxury crop. So we actually grow on a grade 3 formal arable field, pretty awful clay, so we're working it all the time. We sell through our own website, we sell locally, we do pick your owns, we do workshops, but we also have quite a large contract with Abel & Co. This enabled us to scale up and to really think about, can we actually offer a very viable alternative to customers that is ethical. There are a lot of ethics around cut flower growing and cut flower supply globally that are appalling. If you only knew. There are a few really good books about this. There's one called Gilding the Lily, which I'd recommend. There are many practices that we don't even know about. And because cut flowers are an ornamental crop, there are not so many regulations around how much pesticides are used, and they're brought in from tropical areas, they're sprayed to the hilt, and there aren't any regs because, yeah, we're not eating them. So a lot of this isn't understood or known by the consumer. It's not been in anybody's interest to tell the consumer, and we haven't had a very viable alternative in recent years. Obviously, we used to have quite a good cut flower industry before the 1970s. We are starting to take back some market share again, partly because of Brexit, partly because of COVID. Both those have worked in our favour, actually, in sales, not in other ways. So we also operate as a social enterprise. So we work as a training workplace, and we work with people with support needs, people on the autistic spectrum, people with mental health support needs. That's where my heart is. That's where I brought in a cut flower crop because it went so well hand in hand with the work I do with people with support needs. And we actually are able to employ people because we are generating income from the flowers. Most of the tasks are accessible tasks to people with support needs if you organise them correctly. apart from making really large bouquets, which scares everyone. We're located between Bristol and Bath, a brilliant catchment area for us. So we've got 2 really good conurbations to sell to. Although, as I said, we do quite a lot of our sales at a distance. This is an overhead. This is just a drone footage of one of our fields. This was taken in 2018, I think, when we had a really dry summer. I've worked out we can go 7 weeks without irrigating, which is probably about like that. And some of those beds actually we did have to let go, some of the half hardy annuals in that summer. So we run that plot there has 106 beds on it, allotment scale beds. It enables us to plan our rotation, and it enables us to harvest more easily rather than dotting around everywhere. So we try and do single species beds, but we do a lot of intercropping. We might have 4 crops in a bed in a year. So the next field, you can just see the start of the next field. We started doing longer rows in that field, longer rows, narrower rows, again, to make harvesting and maintenance easier. So that's an example. We do everything by hand. We did try no dig for a while, but our soil is so, the structure is so awful. We need to work a bit more on the structure. We've gone backwards, and we have to get the structure improved. So everything at the moment is by hand, and harvesting by hand as well. We'll be talking a bit about crops that need less intervention as I go through the talk, because a cut flower crop, just like a market garden, like a salad crop, it needs a lot of harvesting. You know, we could be daily harvesting in season. So these are things to consider if you want to introduce one. That's just a crop of calendula. We do grow things not just for bouquets, we also grow for the beauty industry and cut herbs, because it goes all alongside what we're doing. We've got 2,600 meters square under tunnels. So you saw in the first picture, I had 3 tunnels. They're mostly for propagation, and this tunnel is a multi-span. And we're in our 3rd year of cropping in this tunnel, and it's saved our bacon many a time, because it is really great for extending the season. Really, we get 6 weeks early. We don't heat the tunnel, but we're 6 weeks earlier with this tunnel. We can overwinter things. We overwintered antirrhinums in here really well last year, which I was surprised at, and it gives us obviously greater stem lengths. And more flowers, so you obviously are creating a bigger crop. We still prefer a flower grown outside to a flower grown in a polytunnel. If we can do both, we'd always prefer an outdoor grown flower, just because it's a stronger stem. But some flowers just don't like the winters and the summers we're having. So we grow over 70 species, and we choose specifically for robustness and ability to survive with few inputs, to suit the organic system, but also to suit vase life. We tend to find that the more robust they are in the ground, the more robust they are when they're travelling and being packed and getting to the consumer. So we don't mess around with really high maintenance flowers. We like the British flower range. And this that we're picking, this is my colleague Wendy and myself picking. It's called Melope. It's related to mallow. It's related to hollyhock and lavatera. And you would think that it really doesn't hold in a vase, but it's amazingly robust. And it's really abundant during the season. It's a half hardy annual, so it doesn't have a long season, but it's surprising. We do grow a lot of perennials though. So 50% probably of our crops now are perennial. This is just a standard Achillea. You'll see it. You'll see it in gardens, and it is. It's quite a bright. It's not to everyone's taste, but there's a range of Achilleas. The millefolium is the more common one that you'd see in gardens, which is in the kind of pink range. But you can get terracotta coloured Achilleas as well. They're a great filler flower, but they're also brilliant in terms of drought resistance. Virtually pest free and resilient to grazing, which we have to consider, because we get, even though I spent loads of money on deer and rabbit fencing, we still get grazed. So the perennials we love, we choose perennials that are derived from native meadow plants and prairie species. And that includes echinacea. Echinacea we don't tend to grow for the flower, we grow it for the cone. So when the flower is finished, the cone is really decorative. We love eryngium as well, the sea holly, echinops, helenium, all the scabious family, the annuals and the perennials, the oxeye daisies and the Shasta daisy family, the veronicas, which are speedwells, all the sage species, and all the mint species. Well, I'd say not all of the mints, but we use a lot of apple mint, peppermint, silver mint. They're brilliant in bouquets as foliage. But they add scent. I mean, when people do start buying British flowers, they realise it's a completely different product from an imported bouquet. It's alive, it's scented, it's diverse. They're mostly open pollinated flowers, so we even import a few insects sometimes with our bouquets. They actually have pollen on them, which is rare nowadays in cut flowers. Some species of cut flowers have been bred to be pollenless. I mean, what is that doing for the environment? So basically, it's all about choosing the right things in the first place. And perennials are your backbone. They will give you, when we do have these very strange warm springs, you don't need to worry. They might not be quite as exciting sometimes. They might be more of your filler species, but put them alongside some of the half hardy and hardy annuals and you've got a really good mix. So we, as I said, we courier bouquets and stems and gifts nationally. We do that via Abel and Cole and through our own website using national couriers, which are a bit hit and miss. We're having to get our packaging so robust because flowers do get thrown around a lot by couriers. Sometimes customers do ring and say, I can tell that they would have been really nice, but they look like they've been trampled by an elephant. So we're always looking at better ways to transport our flowers. We do use what is termed a carbon neutral courier, but I think that's mostly offsetting, which isn't really genuine from my point of view. So we are looking again at going back the whole circle and going local again. And what we absolutely love is supplying click and collect bouquets from our site. So people will ring and just order bouquets, pay for them, and then we're basically making and cutting to order, which is really the lowest carbon footprint you could have. And they get the best of our flowers as well. So encouraging that local market is great if you can, if you're an accessible grower. But then you need to look at adding value and on site, and that's what we're going to come to in a minute. How do you diversify into flowers? Which route do you choose, wholesale or retail, added value or not? So we use minimal packaging. One of the things about, I mean, we know about the use of plastic in horticulture. In floristry, it's just as bad. So we're in two industries that have high levels of plastic usage traditionally. We've looked at across the board at all of that. We've looked at in horticulture, the growing side, obviously we're using really robust modular trays, really robust pots so that they last 15 years. So we're not throwing things away. We do use biodegradable pots at the point of sale as well. So we're keeping our plastic in-house and reusing it, and we're selling it to the customer in biodegradable wood pulp pots, because we do sell plants as well. And in floristry, there's also the use of floral foams, which are essentially petrochemical single-use plastics. We've just got rid of all of that. So we have to look at how we're presenting our flowers. At the moment, today we're doing a big event to go to London. Traditionally, that would have all been done in floral foam. We just have to source containers that will hold water really well. And we use chicken wire and we just arrange straight into that. Really traditional is what we used to do. So again, we're looking at, do we need to wrap these flowers? Do we need cellophane? Obviously, you can get biodegradable, compostable cellulose films now, but we're getting rid of most of that if it's not needed. We do courier in craft boxes, so with minimal ink, with minimal, with just compostable, non-bleached cardboard. And that's a typical spring box of flowers. This was a really popular gift just at the beginning of lockdown. Actually, we called it the feel good flower box. And it's just in there, you've got tulips, ranunculus, anemone and narcissi with a bit of pussy willow, looks like some pittosporum and some eucalyptus. And it's just a really, it is an accessible thing to do, to grow and to courier. You can courier bulb stems dry as well. You don't need any water, any wraps or anything. So it's really useful. Bulb flowers are the most expensive flowers to grow though, and to source organically. That's just a slide I've snuck in there about the people that we employ within our business who have support needs. Those who aren't employed receive City and Guilds training. So we're a training workplace as well. So why did we bother? I think I've already touched on this. Why bother to be certified organic? I'm preaching to the converted here, but it went hand in hand with our ethos and our identity of working with people with support needs across the board. We want to be quality and mindful about what we're doing. We were already using many organic principles, but actually once you become certified, you realise you weren't as close as you thought. And it did make us really think about every step of the process. As I said before, as growers of a luxury non-food crop, we feel more responsibility to conserve valuable finite resources, and we feel that it's even more of an onus on luxury ornamental growers to think about how we treat the soil and resources. There is a lot of greenwashing around, as you, I'm sure, know, but in the floristry industry, even more so. We're seeing eco-florists pop up everywhere, and mostly the eco-florist term is used if they just wrap in brown paper, even if the flowers are flown in. So for many eco-florists, it is around, we use nice wrapping, we use craft paper. It's so much more than that. We felt certification gave confidence to the customers that we're selling to at a distance. And it did help us to think our processes through, but it gives the independent assurance. And it also gave entry to a market where people who were already thinking about organic food suddenly are thinking that their whole lifestyle needs to be organic. So people are moving across to whole lifestyles that are organic. We also like the challenge of looking at better ways to do things. So obviously I'm talking to mostly growers who might be thinking about how could you introduce a cut flower crop. And there's so many ways. You may already be doing it. Some people might think single species are the way to go into a rotation that already exists. Some people might think, oh, actually, we've got a farm shop on site. We can add value. We can make mixed bouquets. So we want to do multiple crops. And there is no right or wrong. It depends on your skill level, your routes to market and your inclination, really, what you're already doing. If you want to be field scale, I would suggest you've got a much more reduced range that you would want to consider. Sunflowers are traditionally grown at field scale. Larkspur, Sweet William, gladioli, stock, cornflower, although the cutting of that is problematic. Scabious, they can all be done on field scale. The perennial crops can be done at field scale. Eryngium, mint, foliage crops. So there really is mileage in single species crops, particularly if you've got an area of your enterprise that is perhaps not doing so well. Sticking a perennial flower crop in that will cope with poor soil, potentially even cope with poor drainage, would be quite a useful thing to do. But it's all about how are you going to be able to sell that crop at the end. And that's what I want to talk about in the second part of my talk, is about routes to market, because the growing is actually easy. It's the marketing and the selling that is the harder bit. It's what we've been building up for years. If you have, as I just mentioned before, if you have an in-house team that can add value to your crops, or if you have access to a florist, basically that's what I have, and I'm very lucky. I realised early on that I prefer the growing, and I didn't enjoy so much the making into floristry products. But that is how you add value in-house. Is the online, is the making the bouquets. They don't have to be online. They can be even if you're selling a mixed box, you do need to know what needs to go in there to give somebody the value at the other end. So some floristry knowledge is quite important if you're not just selling single species. But I'd love someone to do some single species, because it's what we're missing in the UK at the moment, and we're missing it in terms of scale and expertise. And we don't really, most cut flower growing at the moment in the UK is not automated or scaled up. It's a lot of very small enterprises, and we're not organised in terms of marketing, so we're not able to reach all those customers that are definitely there. They are there. Basically, at the moment, demand is outstripping supply, and I know that because we see the statistics all the time from Abel and Cole. They say we could sell 268 boxes today, and I'm supplying them 50. You know, so we know that the customers are there, which is a really important bit of knowledge. So flowers do work well grown within a mixed enterprise. So they work brilliantly within a market garden, within a rotation of vegetables and herbs. But our knowledge and our discussion with other growers is that when they're marketed alongside veg, they don't get the price that you can get for them if you retail them or wholesale them into the gifting market. So routes to market are key. If you're going to bother getting into the intricacies of cut flowers, you do need to look at how you're marketing them. They are a high value crop if treated correctly, and many people sell them alongside their veg at markets, and there's a price point you can't go above. And we've done it a lot in Bristol. We used to sell at White Ladies Road Farmers Market, which was in Clifton. It's one of the wealthiest areas of Bristol. We could never get more than £15 for a bouquet, even though the same people would buy it for 30 in a different context. It's interesting, when you're buying it alongside your food, you don't spend as much on it, it seems. Whereas people will happily buy a gift for around 30, 40, £50 for someone. They do need to probably be a hand-tied bouquet in that context, but it's definitely where you sell it has a massive influence. You do need some extra technical knowledge around harvesting. It's only like learning when your veg and fruit are ripe, but because you're growing so many different species, when to pick is key. And also it's key as to what you're doing. If you're picking for a wedding, you're picking at a different stage from a bouquet going out online, and that's a different stage from sympathy flowers, which have to be really open. So you do need to understand the floristry market. As I said, the growing is easy. It's the context which you're selling into that you have to learn. So definitely, we've had to learn that ourselves, although I work with a florist. But even florists, we've employed florists from they're Dutch trained, or they're trained with imported flowers, and they don't understand the British flower product as well, because they're used to going to the wholesaler, buying a wrap of flowers. It is what it is, and they use it. But if they have to go and cut from our own fields, it's an entirely different process. They have to make a decision about, do I cut this? Is it ready? How will it be in 3 days' time? So it's a very different product. And as I've touched on, there is really no infrastructure yet for people to get together to market their flowers together. It's something that we are very interested in working on. There are many subscription flower boxes nowadays using flown in flowers, with some British flowers, but there's many, they're big businesses. We would love to try and structure growers so that we could take a bit of that market share with ethical flowers. Are you hearing a lot of background noise to my speech? No, it's all right, it's okay. I'm actually having a floor fitted while I do this talk, which wasn't planned, sorry. As long as it's all right your end. So also, as I said before, education around what our product is really important to drive demand further. So how can today's growers meet the demand, working together to gain critical mass. There has to be enough of us to offer this genuine alternative. I think the Soil Association and OGA have actually been talking about this for a number of years. Obviously, COVID has cut across some of this, but we had a meet up a couple of years ago to gain a bit of insight about the interest among growers, and there is a lot of interest. So I think that the next stage could be to have a forum or some kind of arrangement where we can get together and form this critical mass and take on some of the market, really. There's definitely an education on buyers, but there's also quite a lot of education to do on growing, because there is actually no point in doing this badly. We've got a massive opportunity here, but there are issues around vase life. There are issues around getting the product to the customer, and we want this to be considered to be a high quality crop, a high quality product, and so we do need to make sure we are setting standards and keeping them. There's a lot of small scale production. There's nothing wrong with small scale production, but we do need to set our standards so that we're all contributing to a really good product. So creating these routes to market, again, it's something, there's all sorts of things you can do from your own enterprise, but I wonder whether if there was a centralized hub where growers could contribute buckets every week, several species or single species, whether that would really entice production, whether that would, I'd be interested in your feedback during questions. There is a British flower hub, a really great one in Cornwall, run by Clowance Flowers. They're not organic flowers though, so we could. There's obviously Abel and Cole are looking at potentially being a hub also. So there's definitely some mileage in that for ease of access to this market. And flowers have always been part of the biodiversity of a mixed farm. They've always been part of how organic farms work, either just for companion planting or as part of an extra offering. But actually now I think is the time to realise their value. They can be a very valuable cash crop or part of your main enterprise. And this is definitely the time for that. So conclusions. Consumers, I'm just summarising what I've already said. Consumers understand many of the messages around organic food and its benefit to the environment and health, and many are now moving this ethos into lifestyle and non-food purchases. I must say it's really exciting being part of the non-edible organic sector. There's so far to go with it. So far to go, and it could make such an impact if we could start getting people to think about non-food crops as well, and the impact on soil and biodiversity. There is no better time. The planets have aligned at the moment. Pressures of Brexit mean cut flower imports are up, it's cost-wise. And also COVID, unfortunately, did put a lot of growers out of business in Ecuador, Colombia, Kenya. I'm not happy about that, but we are able to take on some more market share as a result. So demand for organic cut flowers outstrips supply at the moment. But as I've said, if we want permanent change in purchasing behaviour, we do need to provide a quality product. The British cut flowers did take a bad hit reputation-wise. People did feel, yeah, they're just wild flowers. They don't last in a vase. I think if we're genuinely going to compete, they do need to be specially chosen varieties that do have vase life. They don't have to have a vase life of 2 weeks and look the same for the whole 2 weeks, like a carnation or a chrysanthemum that you can buy an imported flower. I think there's a beauty in the fact that they might only last 5 days and they smell and they change. There's nothing wrong with a sweet pea or a rose not lasting 2 weeks. I think, again, it's an education process, but we do want our flowers to have value. As I said, growing's the easy part. Post-harvest handling, presentation and routes to market, I think, are the key to the price we can get and the ongoing purchasing of these products in favour of imported flowers. Growers need to recognise the value of their crop and seek ways to add value, either through florist skills or marketing messages. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jo. You can stop sharing your screen now and then nice and big. That was really interesting. So we've got a few hands up. Are people comfortable with coming? It might be nice for her to see you on the screen if you're happy to walk over. I mean, you don't have to if you'd rather I communicate it, but if you want to come up, do you want to come up first? You have your hand up, yeah? And then... no. Oh, no, you're fine. And then just introduce yourself. Okay. Okay.
Hi, Jo.
Hi there.
Hi. My name's Chloe from Satopia Farm. It's a new in conversion 2-acre organic veg farm in London. I actually listened to a seminar with you on cut flowers in the winter, and we started doing cut flowers this season, and it's about a third of sales, and it's been amazing. So thank you so much for the inspiration.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's been great in lots of ways. But yeah, I had two key questions really. Any advice or where to get advice more on how to fit the flowers in the rotation would be great. And also anything more on packing delivery. So at the moment we've just started doing e-bike delivery and we've been doing it in buckets and it was okay, but like on fairly small scale. So yeah, I know you talked about the bulbs and things, but anything on that would be really Thank you very much.
So if you're using e-bike, are you mostly delivering within the same day delivery?
Sorry.
Are you mostly delivering same day?
Yeah, most is farm gate sales or to florists, but yeah, we do same day then bouquets.
So you don't need to have water at all. You can courier dry, which is a lot easier. You just have to condition really well. Condition your flowers. So I didn't even mention conditioning in my talk, but it's this post-harvest handling. It's about making sure that they're really stripped of leaves, so that you're not getting a lot of water loss after picking. So you've got to reduce water loss greatly after picking, and then a lot of water overnight. It needs at least, I think, 24 hours in water. Then you can deliver dry, or with a wrap. We use a cellulose-based stem wrap, a bit like what you get in the bottom of meat packing. You know, you get a joint of meat, and underneath there's a pad of absorbent material. We use that as a flower wrap. It's by the same company. I can recommend that to you if you email me. And yeah, we have the same problems as you with couriering and delivery and handling. We've tried so many different ways. We love collection because collection buckets are our favourite product. But we just get stronger boxes. We could put a reduced range in things that are going further. So bulletproof stuff, and the perennial crops are good for that.
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And sorry, in the rotation.
To tackle rotation as well.
You can sit down. You still sharing your screen?
So shall I? Right. How do I do? Do I just press stop presenting?
Exactly. Perfect.
Is that
there we go. Yeah, that's great.
That's horrendous.
Do you want to talk about the rotation now?
Yeah. So rotation it's not an easy one, because we can't practice a true rotation because we don't have all the same families as with a veg rotation. We've got two legumes, that's sweet peas and lupins. Lupins are perennial, so you can't rotate them as often. Sweet peas are not in the ground long enough to give the benefit really from the nitrogen fixing. So in a way, you don't have you can't rotate in the same way. You have to look at the principles of rotation, which are about rooting depth and about nutrient exploitation and how you balance it across the seasons. So I might follow a hardy annual that's been quite frugal in what it's taken out of the soil, with a half-hardy annual that takes a lot more because it has a much shorter growing season. It's a lot hungrier. So I look at the principles of rotation and apply those to the crops that I want to grow. Bulb crops, I sometimes treat certain bulb crops as annuals, like tulips have to be treated as an annual. But there's some that are perennial, and I try and interplant them because they can build up, bulb crops can build up quite a lot of pests. So I do a bit of interplanting, or I might put a green manure over the top of them. So it's all about trying to water down some of the pest problems by intercropping perennial crops, or looking at what's taking what out. Heavy feeders, it's the same principle, heavy feeders and light feeders, shallow rooting, deep rooting. The perennials are a slight problem because you don't rotate them. If you, in your garden, you might lift and divide perennials every 3 to 5 years. When you're cutting them, you can leave them longer because you're maintaining vigor. So you might not lift a perennial for 7 years. So you could get quite a lot of pest build up there. So you do need to think about, well, you just need to look at your soil and keep an eye on your crops and rotate accordingly. Asters, annual asters, they do build up viruses. I put them as far away from each other every year. I will move my asters the biggest amount across my folding. They get a virus that lasts 7 years. And some things I just don't grow at all, like lilies. I just don't touch them. Whenever I put a lily in my site, I get lily beetle appear from completely nowhere. I've got no gardens around me, no crops at all related to lilies, and they will still find a lily, that red lily beetle. So we've got so much choice within British cut flowers that you can just ignore whole species and not worry.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that specific topic, or if not, do you want to come up, or you can stay there, whatever you prefer. You can come on. You can't hear you if you don't come up. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for talking so excitedly about organic flower growing. Oh yeah. So I'm Nanda, and I'm at Wright Organic, which is a farm. We do meat and veg, and I'm doing the flowers. Yeah. Very small at the moment. We're by the Forest of Dean.
Yes. Near me then.
Huh?
Very near us.
Yeah. I've actually I've been with Jenny, was it?
Yes.
She showed me a bit on harvesting and conditioning.
Yeah.
It was great. But anyway, I'm really interested in, at the moment we're doing mixed flowers, bunches on a quite small scale, but it's a bit overwhelming, like all the varieties, and I'm just like, whoa. And I'm really a vegetable grower, and I'm very interested in doing single species field scale, but I don't know where to get the information from. I just would like a bit of guidance on what is, so, I could just go for it, but it'd be also, if it has been done before, that would be much easier,
It's hardly been done at all. So it'd be lovely to have more people. People do sunflowers. It depends. It's all about what your route to market is. You almost have to start in reverse. You have to think, what can I sell? And what am I comfortable growing? A lot of people do single species as pick your own crops. So do you have people who can come into your farm to do pick your own? Because it's a really good way to start it. Particularly pick your own sunflowers. But pick your own larkspur would work, because larkspur is quite easy to grow, and it works for confetti as well. I think you have to start with a really easy, cheap crop, and that can be direct sown, perhaps. I mean, we do everything from transplants because we have just too many pest problems, and we have poor germination if we direct sow. But
so I basically look at the species and then think, oh, can we do that on a field scale?
Yeah, you've got to think, what could I sell? How do I sell my crop? It's just,
as well.
And a sunflower, people will buy a sunflower by the stem, actually. You can sell sunflowers, but the problem with sunflowers is everybody's got them when you have. So the price isn't brilliant. But a pick your own sunflower experience will get you a lot of money. It's like pick your own pumpkins. So you could start with something really easy that is very recognisable to the public. It is an organic sunflower, which doesn't exist as much. Abel and Cole did sunflowers this year for the first time, and they sold out every week. So we know that it's a seller. It's a very good way to start field scale, I think. So either sunflower or something like larkspur. Cornflower, the market isn't there for it really. So you just, yeah, and it's a nightmare to cut. So it's got to be something that you think has value as a single stem or 10 stems that a customer would recognise you can sell, but that you can also grow it. So
yeah, okay.
It's just one place to start, but there are, I mean, we can have a further conversation about it for definite.
That would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? You don't have to come up.
It's putting them off.
No, okay. Yeah.
Where do you get those transplants from, or the other planting material? Where do you source that
Yeah,
from?
perfect. Okay.
And are the transplants grown in heat-free medium?
Okay, yeah. So there's a question about your planting material and the transplants that you use and how you source them, and how the challenges around that, if there are any, and using peat-free medium as well.
Yeah, massively important question. We buy most things in by seed. We go to the normal seed sources, but there's hardly any. So Tamar Organics, there's a number of all the normal veg organic seeds. We'll go there and see what they've got cut flower wise, but it's normally on the herb range, or they're short stemmed, that you can certainly get sunflowers organically. So all the normal organic sources of veg you can get organic flowers from, but there's still a massive, it's like 10, 12 species that I can get organically. So I have to derogate everything else through the Soil Association. I have to make sure it's not treated. Bulbs are a massive issue. There is a bulb supplier in Holland that is organic. It's the bulbs are 6 times more expensive than non-organic, so you have to put that into your costings immediately. And you've also got to question, do I need this bulb? Do I need it? I worry about bulbs because there's a lot of fungicides used around bulb production. So although we're allowed to derogate them, we do have to check for residues. We have to, and bulb suppliers are quite cagey about what they do with their bulbs. So within ornamentals, there's also a real deficit of knowledge about how this material has been treated. Then you have to ask questions without completely eliminating a load of crops you need. We're trying to convert things ourselves into perennials. So I bought a lot of narcissi this year, a lot of narcissi, and we're putting them for conversion and making them perennial so that they will be organic within our own holding. But you need a big buffer zone of land for that. It's why we converted an extra field. So we're having to really create our own stock. So we raise everything from seed in modules, and then we transplant them all ourselves. So they're our own in-house transplants. We use certified organic compost. There's four or five on the market. We use fertile fibre. Lots of people love it. Lots of people hate it. It's your own preference. It is really good for production. I quite like it. It's a light, warm soil, which is totally contrasting to our clay, so it does raise plants really well, and when I'm planting them in, it's adding a bit of lightness to my clay. So but there are many bark products, there are many wool and moss products, but it does have to be approved by the soil, well, your certification body for use. Is that everything? I mean, it's not everything, but that's a start.
Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, thank you.
What was your name? And
Oh, sorry, it's Margie.
that was from Margie Lanston from Coventry. If you can hear, I'm not sure if you
I
can.
just about heard that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect.
Hello.
Oh, I thought I'd lost sight. Yeah, Matthew Adams.
Nice to meet you.
Growing real food for nutrition. We have met before. I grew up in Ironax, and I know your husband very well. So I'm just picking up on your what you're doing with the soil and pests. You've got a lot of pest pressure, it feels. So my question is around quality of the flowers that you're growing in relation to the soil. And I'm coming now from a perspective of growing vegetables, fruits and vegetables, with a concept of being so healthy that they're totally resistant to pest and disease.
Yes.
And that's a reflection on soil quality, and that symbiotic relationship between the two.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier on that you're not digging, you're having to work the soil because it's very clay based.
Yeah.
And so I'm picking up on the fact that your soil health could potentially be improved.
Yes.
So I'm just talking around this because I'm sort of developing ways of measuring food quality, and I'm thinking of adapting and applying that to quality of flowers.
Yeah.
And I could happily come along and test some of your flowers, and we could maybe get to maybe not the bottom of it, but the beginnings of an understanding about that relationship.
Absolutely. So we've seen a transition. So when we've started very slowly with our flowers on the site that I'm on, we've been on there 11 years, and you can see the whole, I often do soil profiles within my site, and you can see the transition, the journey towards the health, a better health of the soil. Our soil was appalling when we started. But even after 11 years, I'm disappointed with the progress, even though we apply so much organic matter. And it's not all about organic matter. The rotation is important, and it is much harder to plan a really good rotation within flowers. So there's so much learning there. There's so much learning. The prairie and meadow species are useful. They don't take a lot out, but they don't always enhance the health of the soil either in the way I'd like them to. We do a lot of cutting. We're taking quite a lot out, even though I say we're not putting much in. So there's definitely balances to be had. We do analysis annually. We're on the right side of things, but yeah, I'd love that conversation and a bit of investigation, definitely.
Okay, well, we'll have to get some dates in the diary. And it's just touching on a workshop that we had earlier on. It was about organic certifications. And so you're organically certified, yet you haven't managed to create a totally healthy ecosystem, that relationship between plant and soil. So the workshop earlier on was about organic certification and what it does.
Yes.
And your story is telling me what it doesn't do is guarantee the quality of the actual plants that are coming out of that system.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. That could be true. It looks at a set of aspirations perhaps and a journey, but whether it can measure an end point, it is an interesting concept. Yeah, okay, I'd like to explore that further too. Yeah.
If you're interested, we could maybe work together.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was definitely something that came through about that aspiration and a direction that you want to move in, and you can't always get it perfect. And it's been really interesting to hear, your experiences and challenges of working with this system and what works and doesn't work. So I think everybody's appreciated that, and thank you for joining us. Does anyone have any questions? So the presentation's been recorded. I'm sure that Jo will be happy to share her slides. Someone's just asking whether they could have a copy. And she's also made a video, like of a tour around her farm, which she'll be able to share afterwards. So I'll speak to Phil and get that sent out to you guys. Yeah, anything? Yeah. Someone's asking, sorry, I'm going to introduce you. Sonia from, what's the farm name? Sutton Community Farm in South London was just asking what conditioning is.
So condition is the post-harvest treatment of your flowers. So you cut your flowers on site. You have to cut them at a certain stage of development, and that is different for each species, unfortunately. And then you strip quite a lot of the leaves off. I can't say a specific amount because some you leave some top leaves on, some you might strip all the leaves off. and then you actually put them into deep water for, I would recommend a minimum of 12 hours. We're normally cutting early and we don't then use them till the next day, unless we're arranging straight into water, but you still wouldn't want to send it out. So, and some aspects of conditioning might involve searing the end of the stem, where you're trying to get rid of any air bubbles which make flower heads flop. So it's all about getting them really hydrated. They may not be fully hydrated in the field when you're cutting them, you see. So it's about getting them really hydrated, and it extends vase life significantly, really significantly, by 3 days plus. A non-conditioned flower could wilt as soon as you send it out. A conditioned flower has a vase life between 5 to 10 days. So there's a few species you don't have to condition, and they tend to be things like Sweet Williams that are grown in the field. They're a good field grown crop.
Do the conditions have to be cool? Do you cool them?
It's about cooling. Is cooling a big part of conditioning?
No, not in British flowers, surprisingly. Cooling can be a disadvantage with a British cut flower crop, because they can't take the shock of it. You ambient temperatures all the way through, really, for British flowers. When I used to supply a florist near me, who now works for me, she never put my flowers in her cold store with her Dutch flowers. They're not used to it. They don't need it. There's more of a shock sometimes. Obviously, you don't want them to open. If you want your flowers to stay in bud, you don't want them in full sunlight. But it's not about decreasing the temperature always, unless you're supplying them to somebody else who has to cool them, in which case you want to do it gradually.
Did you want to come up? Or? Yeah, quick question. Yeah. Yeah, so there were challenges during the heat wave in conditioning flowers, and
to be honest, there was some, we took all our couriered bouquets offline. We didn't send in real heat waves, 30 degrees. We won't send through the normal courier network where there's no cool, because they would be in a van 40 degrees plus. So in heat waves, we don't send out national flowers, but actually, yes, it does decrease vase life by a couple of days, and people don't buy flowers. It's funny, people don't buy flowers in heat waves, so you don't get quite as much demand. So it is a concern. It's definitely a concern, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. You just have to condition for a bit longer, and they blow a little bit more.
Yeah, good.
The worst weather actually is a warm spring, warm Aprils, which we do get. They're the worst, because all of your tulips will flower at once, and you'll lose your whole crop potentially.
Was there another question over there? Okay, yeah.
I'm just curious, before we do it, we're not doing any perennials. Just wondering if, like, most of your production is in the summer months, or is it evenly distributed throughout the year?
So it was about kind of timings of production. Was asking about saying that they're mainly getting most of their output from July onwards, and do you have that challenge, or how do you manage to space it out over the year?
We've amazingly achieved, just because we've done it so long, we've got cut flowers available most of the year. So we're doing an event this week, and then I think we're due a frost any minute, and then we'll move across into bulb crops, so things like paper white narcissi, lots of foliage berries. Then we do the whole Christmas thing, and then we've got again narcissi, not in great volume, but narcissi in Jan, and then we start getting anemones in February. So it depends whether you are happy with smaller volumes in those leaner times, and you just create products that are people will pay a bit more for flowers off season. So we create products with smaller posies and things like that with extra gifts. It's why you need to be in the gifting market in that time, because you can get a higher value for your fewer flowers. So we can supply year round, amazingly. We never thought, we used to start in May and finish in October when we were first in flowers. But we do push the boundaries more and more every year now.
Do you have any follow-up? Or? Okay. There's a nodding, enthusiastic smile. Looking good. Anybody else got a final question? All right. So it was great. It's like nice to see all this opportunity for like knowledge sharing, and would you like be happy for people to get in touch?
Absolutely. I think we do need to organise through the OGA and the Soil Association. There's definitely a willingness and a desire for some kind of forum which could help. We also do training on site. It's not accessible to everyone, but we do quite a lot of professional courses where we can share some knowledge as well. But definitely, I think it needs to happen for us to be able to meet these challenges going forward, really.
So kind of maybe opportunity for a continued like working group, or like opportunities to meet online. You'd be interested in that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, they want you to come and visit as well.
Oh.
Here.
There is an organisation called Flowers from the Farm, which many of you might be members of, and they have forums as well. And they're not all organic, some of them are, but that's also a really good forum. Flowers from the Farm, it's called.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. We'll have a final round.
Thank you. I'm glad it worked. I was worried about the technology, but thank you so much for hosting as well, Charlotte. That was brilliant.
Oh, thank you. I'll stop recording.